A very good evening to everyone present here. Myself, Shauradip Odhikari. On behalf of Modok Trainer Academy, I extend my warm welcome to all respected elders, scholars, teachers, researchers, writers, students, and every participant who has joined this important session today on this meaningful topic, Nund, the Rishi of Kashmir. Today's evening becomes deeply significant because we have among us an extraordinary scholar whose work has reshaped how Kashmiri youth understand their own philosophical heritage. Today, we are truly honored to welcome respected Professor Meem Zaffar, also known as Ghulam Mustafa Khawaja, former director of the Institute of Kashmir Studies at the University of Kashmir. His journey itself is an true inspiration to all of us. He began his academic life as a lecturer of philosophy in Jammu and Kashmir Education Department, and through decades of dedicated research, he rose to become a professor at the University of Kashmir. His sincere work on Kashmir Shaivism, particularly his translations of the Shiva Sutras into the Kashmiri language, both Devanagari and Nastaliq scripts, received national recognition and earned him the Sahitya Akademi Translation Award in 2014. His research was also guided by important scholarly interactions, including his doctoral phase under the legendary philosopher, respected Professor Daya Krishna. His work isn't just literary translation, it is civilizational preservation. He reminds us that Kashmir's philosophical systems, especially Shaiva Darshana, aren't museum belongings. They are living knowledge streams which shaped Kashmiri thought, poetry, logic, art, and behavior. He urges us to view Kashmir's history not in fragments, but as a complete continuum. His participation in interactions, even in recent years, including major sessions organized by the Jammu and Kashmir Academy of Art, Culture and Languages at Tagore Hall, Srinagar, proves that he remains a living intellectual influence for both scholars and minds. His literary work reflects true dedication to Kashmiri intellectual heritage. His poems have appeared in leading Kashmiri journals, and many have been translated into English, Hindi, and also in other languages. He co-compiled the important Kashmiri critic journal Vad 1995 to 2008, and later served as the editor of the Journal of Kashmir Studies 2007 to 2012. He has also translated dialogues of the Greek philosopher Plato into Kashmiri and translated Baldev Krishna Ved's Hindi novel Dard La Dawa, which was serialized in Vad. He co-edited the book Approaches to Kashmir Studies, published by the Institute of Kashmir Studies. So, today, without taking any more time, I once again cordially welcome our today's esteemed speaker, respected Professor Meem Zaffar. And now, I humbly request him to start his valuable lecture today. Thank you all.
So I was saying that it is a cold evening. So namaskar to all the people who are participating in this conversation. I am deeply indebted to Modak Trainer Academy, who provided me this platform. Earlier also, I talked about Laldet. Now, today, we'll be talking about Nund Rishi, who is called the flag bearer of Kashmir, Alamdari Kashmir, because of his tremendous contribution to the cultural and spiritual growth and preservation of Kashmir spiritual and cultural tradition. His poetic articulation is called shruk in Kashmiri. It is a form of shlok. In Kashmiri, we call shruk for a shlok. So his poetic compositions are called shlok. So we have to give a little bit of a background. So Sufism arrived in India in 12th century. By that time, it had reached a respectable position of development in its theoretical aspects. By 14th century, it was well established in the country, and one of the sects or schools of Sufism that was called Chastiya was at its zenith. We are talking about the 14th century. So 14th century was very crucial for Kashmir because at this time Islam was spreading at a fast pace in Kashmir, and along with Sayyids, some Sufis had also arrived in Kashmir. At this point of fast change, at this time of turmoil, so an age-old religious social system was replaced by a new system, and everything old was being abandoned without examining, without evaluating its relevance to the present times or future times. So, in this turmoil, Kashmir produced two great mystics, two great spiritual personalities who preserved and conserved Kashmir's age old spiritual and cultural tradition. And they are Laldet and Nund Rishi. Nund Rishi is also called Alamdari Kashmir, that is, flag bearer of Kashmir. So, why he is so called, it will become clear in our conversation in the process. So, Laldet apparently was a Shaivite mystic, but when we read her poetic compositions that are called Vak, we realize that she is a universal mystic who has assimilated the centuries old spiritual tradition of Kashmir. But every every expression of hers carries the stamp of her own spiritual experience. Actually, as a matter of fact, Kashmir had been the center of learning during the Middle Ages. We had produced great personalities, great mystics, great philosophers, great logicians, great aestheticians like Anandvardhan, Abhinavgupta, Bilhan, Kalhan, so many names if we start taking names, and but whatever they had produced, because at that point of time our lingua franca was Sanskrit, so it was all in Sanskrit language. But after the advent of Islam in Kashmir during the 14th century, Kashmiris lost their control, or lost their familiarity with Sanskrit language, and by and by, they were distanced from that rich tradition which they had inherited from their ancestors. But Laldet is the person who connects us with our past. She effectively, seamlessly bridges the gap between pre Islamic Kashmir and post Islamic Kashmir. So Laldet has preserved for us that spiritual inheritance that has come to us from centuries. because she expressed her she experiences in a poetic form. So a poetic form does not allow for much of a logic. So there are no logical arguments in lalwak, but there is intensity of feeling, there is intensity of experience in them. So she connect, and now it was through Nund Rishi that tradition continued after Lal. Now, Nund says about Lal, there's a famous shlok of Nund Rishi, Shruk, which goes like this: Tame Padman Porich Lale, Yemi Gale Amrit Chau, Soisun Avatar Lale, Sui me Vardit Mo Divo. That lull of Padmanpur, who drank in long draughts nectar divine, she is the divine manifestation for us. O God, O Lord, please bless me with the same boon. Now, in this walk, in Kashmiri, Tame Padman Purich Lale, Yeme Gale Amrit Chao. There's the concept of Amrit. Soisun Avatar Lale, there's the concept of Avatar. Sui me varditmo divo. There's a concept of var, and divo means the Lord God. These four concepts, Amrit, Avatar, Var, and Div, these are all indigenous concepts. They don't come from a sophistic tradition. Although commonly Laldev and Nundrishi are also called Sufis, but the present speaker is of the opinion that epithet does not suit them. So it will become clear later on. So these four concepts which are in this work, Amrit, Amrit, uh, uh, Tem Padman Purish Lale Yem Gale Amrit Chau. So it's Amrit, Avatar, Var, and Dev. These are indigenous concepts, and they have not been borrowed from any other tradition. So now, this is the opinion of the present speaker, that they are not Sufis, they are mystics, they are rishis in their own right. So there are so many stories about the birth of Nund Rishi. So these folk stories, they go on, sometimes they are just uh, fantasy. So I would like to just narrate one small anecdote about his birth. It is said that when he was born, he did not even touch the breast of her mother. He did not suckle. However much the mother tried to suckle the baby, but he did not suckle her mother's breast. And this situation continued for 3 days. And on the fourth day, it is said that the wandering saint Lalded was passing through that village, and the mother approached her and requested her for help. So it is said that Lalded took the baby in her lap and put her shriveled breast in his mouth and demanded, when you were not ashamed of being born, why are you fighting shy now of suckling? So it is said that the baby immediately started to suckle the breast of Laldad. She was an old lady, but milk poured, and the baby was satisfied. And later on, her mother suckled him. So this story might not be a true representation of facts, but it represents the public perception of the saint, of the Rishi, as the true inheritor of the spiritual tradition of Kashmir through Lalded. That Lalded has passed the tradition through her milk, through her best milk, to the baby, this Nund Rishi. So we will talk about. See, this is a vast subject to talk about Nund Rishi and his background and his philosophy and his impact, it requires days and days. It is a series of lectures. So I will talk about Nund Rishi by quoting some of his verses and talking about them. Now, one of his famous verses that I like most is like this: Poziod bozak pans numrak, natmaz numrak dapak namaz. Shivastu shunis yod mül karak, sedio soiche vantar namaz. Poziod bozak pans numrak, natmaz numrak dapak namaz. Shivastu shunis yod mül karak, sedio soiche vantar namaz. If you are a seeker of the truth, bend the five, that is five senses. Otherwise, you bend your body and call it Nimaz. If you are able to fuse Shiva and Shunya, that indeed is the inner Nimaz. Now, let us see. Here is a Muslim Rishi defining Nimaz as a function of Shiva and Shunya. There are different sects and branches of Buddhism. Buddhist philosophy has also various branches, and Buddhistic religion also has few branches. But all of them have one concept in common, that is Shunyata. Similarly, Shaivism also has many sects and many branches and many philosophical schools. But one concept that is common among them all is the concept of Shiva or Shiva. So now what the Rishi is demanding is a fusion of Shiva and Shunya. That is, one has to realize the essence of Buddhism as well as the essence of Shivism. Then only can one realize and commune with the ultimate reality. That is the inner Nimas. Now, how strange it will look now that a Muslim Rishi is defining Nimaz as a function of Shiva and Shunya. Now, you see, he called himself a Rishi, but he did not call himself a Sufi. He did not use the language of Sufis. He did not establish a Khanka. In Kashmir, we call the place of a Sufi as Astan. Probably it is the short form of Devistan, the sacred place of gods. So this shruk, Poziot bozak pas numrak natmaz numrak dapak namaz shivastu shunis yud mul karak sedo soiche vantar namaz. In Laldad we see the concepts of Shiva and Shunya, but in whole of Laldad we never meet the concept of Nimaz. Here the Rishi adds the concept of Nimaz also to the Shiva and Shunya. Now, see how seamlessly these concepts belonging to totally different traditions have been woven in a beautiful fashion. And these terms radiate a light that pierces not only the mind but also the soul. So, now this is Nundrishi. Now, his level of experience was such that he calls prophet a rishi. So I will read one of his small poems. It goes like, Aval Rishi Ahmad Rishi, Ahmad Rishi, Doyim Hazrat Uwais Aw, Treim Rishi Zulka Rishi, Surim Rishi Palas Aw, Pucham Rishi Rum Rishi, Sheim Rishi Miran Aw, Satmis Karham Dasham Hishi, Bokus Rüşt Mikah now. The first Rishi is Ahmad Rishi. The second comes Hazrat Uwais. The third Rishi is Zulka Rishi. The fourth one is Palas Rishi. The fifth Rishi is Rum Rishi. The sixth Rishi is Miran. The seventh one is yet to be named. What Rishi am I, and what name do I bear? Nund appropriates the Prophet of Islam, be peace upon him, and calls him a Rishi. The term Rishi functions like a metaphor here, which, as in a particular historical context, enlightens the connotations of the metaphor. Now, what kind of identity is this? How can the Prophet be called a Rishi? This is almost a blasphemy. No lay person can call the Prophet by such a name. It is only Nund who could do that on the basis of his own intense spiritual experience. The Prophet is a Rishi like other Rishis. The only difference is that he is the first one. He is the foundation. The order stated here is logical and not a chronological one. Nund acknowledges and appreciates the originating significance of the light that is Muhammad, be peace upon him. But after the Prophet, he comes to Uwais Karni, not mentioning any of the galaxy of spiritual personages from among the companions of the Prophet. It is because Uwais Karni sets an example as how even without meeting or seeing the Prophet physically, one may still be spiritually enlightened and realize the truth by one's unflinching love for the Prophet Muhammad, be peace upon him, or for the light that is Muhammad, be peace upon him. After this, Nund straightway comes to the Kashmiri spiritual tradition of rishis and names Zulka, Palas, Ruma, and Miran in that order. In the end of the poem, Nund proclaims that the seventh rishi is yet to be identified, but he cannot claim the title for himself, as he is a non-person and does not possess even a name or identity. He emphasizes his non identity by interrogating himself and asking in a sarcastic manner, "What Rishi am I? And what is my name?" Usually, this saying of Nund is attributed to his humbleness, as ordinarily no real God man will declare himself to be one. But this saying of Nund has another dimension also, which we need consider. Nund acknowledges and appreciates the rishis belonging to different spiritual, spatio-temporal temporal temporal contexts, but recognizes their spiritual merit. But he does not identify himself with any one of them. He considers himself as a non-entity in comparison to them. Identifying oneself with the already given models is the safest and easiest way of obtaining an identity, as it is hard in any social and religious setup to accept the authority of the individual against that of the tradition, and to recognize the individual's right to understand and interpret tradition according to one's own experience and understanding, and accordingly mold one's life and influence the society in one's own way. For Nund, identity is a continuous search, a continuous process of questioning one's knowledge and one's name. This is to my mind, this to my mind is the essence of the Rishi's philosophy of identity. Now, I will read one more poem, one more this quotation, one a couple of shloks from Nund Rishi, where he defines a Musalman. Who is a Musalman? Who is a Muslim? Normally, we call a Muslim a person who surrenders to God and follows the five principles of Islam. But here is what Nund has to say: one whose body emits fragrance and mind incense. One whose body emits fragrance and mind incense, who attends with reverence the wise discourse of the wakeful, full of pious deeds and free from anger, may verily be called a Mussalman. Next goes, one who values himself not even at a cowrie, who vies not with others in gaining respect, who keeps company of the good, abandoning the wicked, and night and day restrains himself, who ferries himself and others across the ocean, may verily be called a Mussalman. And the last one, living in the backwoods, one who subsists on chicory, who dedicates himself to the search of truth, who tightens his belt and acts with patience, and realizes his body to be mortal, who in the utter loneliness ponders upon the reality, may verily be called a Mussalman. But Rishi does not identify himself with the Mussalman also. Now, in a long poem, he pays tribute to 14 spiritually evolved personages and prays to God that he might be graced, he might be endowed, he might be enlightened in the same way in which these spiritual personages were enlightened. Out of these 14, only one is Muslim. The 13 are non-Muslims. Prior to Islamic period, these rishis, he pays his tribute. And I will read these lines. They are beautiful lines. So then we can talk about them. It was Lal. I have already read this Shuk once. It was Lalla Padmanpur who drank in long draughts nectar divine. She is the divine manifestation for us. May thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. The mute girl of Lukbhavan, the second one, the mute girl of Lukbhavan, worshipped God with undivided devotion. She flew away with the birds of the air. May thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. Kar and Lulak remained dumb while they worshipped secretly. In a state of non mind, soared they into the void. May thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. The ascetic at Ishba was not blessed with thy grace. He knew not how to serve thee. At Raghzal, Raghzal is a village. At Raghzal, the vendor of Pashmina yarn was blessed. May thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. Sadvoni, the half-witted, was blessed by thee. The same who ate unboiled food. The hermit Siddh Sri Kant won the grace. May thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. That blessed and heavenly Sahjanand Buddha, who abandoned worldly power and wealth and tamed countless creatures, may thou, Lord, bestow a similar boon upon me. Now, here, Rishi pays tribute to 14 spiritual persons out of them, only one is Muslim, and he happens to be one of his disciples. Zainuddin was his name. Now, this poem is recited on the night of power, Shab Qadr, in Khanqah Molla and Chari Sharif. These are two big mausoleums of Muslims in Kashmir. This poem is recited on that night in these places. And this is the only place in the world where names of non Muslims are uttered in the prayer as prayer words. Nowhere in the world this is this happening. This is only in Kashmir that the names of these non-Muslim sages are uttered as prayer words, and they are used in prayers on that auspicious night. So this is a small introduction to Nund Rishi and the kind of philosophy he has propounded. And it is the age old spiritual and cultural tradition of Kashmir which he has preserved and conserved. So that is the great thing. That is why he is called Alamdari Kashmir, flag bearer of Kashmir. And now you see the kind of when we there's a concept of Kashmiriyat. Now what is Kashmiriyat? Kashmiriyat is this: Poziot bozak pas numrak natmaz numrak dapak namaz shivastu shunus yod mulkar sedio vantar namaz. If you are a seeker of truth, bend the five, means five senses. You have to deal with your five senses first. Bend the five. Otherwise, you bend your body and call it namaz. If you are able to fuse Shiva and Shunya, that indeed is the inner namaz. If you take this shuk, even linguistically, not at the level of meaning, just at the level of language, you see how there is a seamless integration of different concepts belonging to different traditions, belonging to different spiritual and religious and the intellectual traditions, and how the Rishi has been able to create a aesthetics of this mysticism, and that has come down to us right from Laldet to present day Samad Mir and Ahad Zargar. So this tradition continues even now, and we are indebted to Laldet and Nundrishi for all this, for preserving our cultural and spiritual identity, and making us rich and making us spiritually enlightened through their words. Thank you.